It's back. After over a full year of not being able to post this, I am finally getting back to a question and answer session. You guys sent in all your questions, and now I get to turn around and answer all these motherfuckers, well, except for the YouTube orders, because he can continue to go fuck himself. Anyways, you guys can hear my voice is still raspy, still a little sick. However, I won't be coughing in your ear in this video. So we're just gonna jump right into it. No intro, skipping right into the butt sex. We're gonna jump right to the questions over from the peanut gallery over at prestigegamers.com. First question from Kinchi Rick 123. With the rise of virtual reality controllers for consoles, HTC Vive, PlayStation Virtual Reality, Oculus Rift, do you think they can change the way home consoles are played in the near future, or are they just a fad that will die out? I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It's a fad. Like every other peripheral that has ever been made for consoles, from the Kinect to that PlayStation douche one. You remember that shit, man? And even to a certain extent, the Wii console and all of its attachments outside of the normal controller. I know Nintendo fan kiddies are going to jump up and down and argue, but the reality is, if the Wii was so popular, why did that shit die out 3 years into its 5-year existence? We'll talk about that one a little bit later, but wheels for racing games, guns for shit like duck hunt and whatnot. Virtual reality is not going to change gaming in any significant way. It's going to be a fad. It will end by the time this console generation is over, and it'll be all forgotten in just a couple years down the road, like every other peripheral. Every other peripheral has done exactly what virtual reality has done. They sell well at the beginning, but over the course of its lifetime, it doesn't do shit. That's exactly what's going to happen. All the people that want to buy it up front are going to buy it. The rest of the people that had no intention of buying it are never going to buy it, and it's not going to make any money in sales. Next question from TheGuywithnoGamertag. There are a number of game series from previous generation consoles which have not had announcements as to whether they'll return on the current generation of consoles. Burnout, Mortal Storm, for 2 examples. What game, sequel, or series would you like to see brought onto the current generation of consoles? Now, I'm not sure if you're talking about a sequel or a remastered version of old games. However, my answer to both, a remaster or continuation type of sequel, would be 2 series. One in particular, though, and that would be either the Marvel Ultimate Alliance series or the Resistance series. I mean, fuck, Sony should just put me in charge of the fucking Resistance series, because I could get that motherfucker back on track and turn that series into something that really could have been decent. You know, it didn't sell well for a very good reason. Resistance had no identity. It's like Insomniac ran out of ideas, or they thought their ideas just weren't good enough, so they had to redo things so many times over. You know, part 1 to part 2 to part 3 were all different games from one another. Everything from the mechanics to even the fucking main character were different, man. The first game had its own identity. Game number 2 then wanted to be like Call of Duty because Call of Duty got popular. Then game number 3 said, okay, we can't be Call of Duty, let's be our own shit. So let's kind of be a combination of the two of them, and for whatever reason, they had no fluidity. They had no identity. All 3 games felt completely unique from one another, and that's why that series didn't succeed. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, on the other hand, the first game sold pretty well, the second game didn't sell pretty well, and Activision said, you know what, we're paying for all this money for these fucking licenses from Marvel and Disney and whatnot. We don't want to pay for that shit again. So that's why we haven't seen part 3. However, those would be the 2 games that I would love to see have a reboot or remaster, whatever the fuck you want to do. Next question from Goob876. What do you think about the trend of science denial and ignorance in the US, especially on topics such as vaccination and climate change, and what do you think can be done to combat this? Well, first of all, you got to keep in mind, these are the same idiots that put Trump in the White House that are denying this shit. These are the same idiots that are willing to hedge the future of their children against the current well-being of the planet right now. These are the same idiots that think the World Trade Center was hit by missiles, Sandy Hook shooting didn't actually happen, and that Agent Orange is slowly killing us all. The reality is, not much is going to be done to change the opinion of idiots. There's just no way around that shit. These are the people that believe in conspiracy theories, that believe the U.S. wants to institute Sharia law for some reason. You can't fix this paranoia. You can't fix denial. You know, fuck, you can fix stupid, which is a bigger problem. You could easily fucking fix stupid. The unfortunate reality is that these people are so far gone from human understanding that there is no way to even get them to consider facts in front of their fucking face. They just deny the facts. They just sit here, they look at the facts, and they say these aren't fucking facts. It's like, what the fuck? Fucking alternate facts. You know, what's funny is that when you ask someone who is in such deep denial over vaccinations, over global warming, to present facts that prove otherwise, they can't. They provide theories, they give you thoughts, they give you lies, they don't give you any scientific data, and then what they mainly do is they take conspiracy talking points from less educated, less qualified people that they believe know more than the fucking experts. Put it this way, if at any point you reference or believe anything Alex Jones has stated, you are part of the problem. You know, even people that crackhead supports say that motherfucker lost his goddamn mind, just does that shit for money. So if at any point you agree with that motherfucker, chances are you're part of the problem. Next question from Living Sky. So you made it very clear where you stand in the like and sub for YouTube and donations on Twitch. But what do you think about Patreon trend that is going on? Is it worse than what Twitch streamers do? Or do you feel it's okay asking for people for money like that? I'm talking about how some YouTubers are doing this to make whatever they do on YouTube their full-time jobs. And here's a link to whatever the fuck it is. That way he knows what the hell I'm talking about. I'll tell you right now, I had no fucking idea what you were talking about. I had no idea this even existed until you posted a link and I had to actually go look that shit up. So I was curious what the fuck was going on because obviously people find ways of gaggling money out of internet viewers and figured this is another one of these fucking scams. However, the more I read about this, the more I realized this is actually a pretty decent thing. No, really. Compared to YouTube and Twitch, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in today's market, we're talking low-level artists to make money. And I'm talking people that actually have creation work, such as music or painting or sculpting or comedy sketches, poetry, you know, whatever floats an artist's boat. It's not easy to create something for their viewers to enjoy without some major company taking in some of that person's revenue for the first place. That site allows creative people an avenue to actually make money based on what people are willing to pay. And as you can see, it's nominal amounts, it's optional, and it goes directly to the person. You know, unlike YouTube, where if you create something, the money goes to Google first, or it goes to a sponsor like Maker Studios, Machinima, Fullscreen, and then based on your views, based on your viewers clicking ads, then they give you a cut of that money. And if you're part of a sponsorship like I am, then the sponsorship takes the biggest chunk of their money and you end up with fucking squat. So imagine if you're a small-time songwriter or singer or a painter with your own fucking Bob Ross style art paint along show. Oh man, I missed that afro motherfucker. But you have to post it on YouTube. You have to wait for people to view it. Then Google gives your sponsor some money. Then you get your cut. So if you have your own channel without a sponsor, YouTube still takes a large cut of their money before giving you a taste. But essentially, you're losing out on a lot of money before you actually get some of that revenue. Here, people can bring their creations straight to their fans. And in all honesty, I'll be very clear, I like that. I think that's a better way for them to keep the money out of corporate hands, as long as Patreon doesn't take a huge cut of their subscription money. Now, to me, this is worlds different than Twitch, by far and away completely different, where people have these stupid fucking donations for someone playing a goddamn video game. Think about this for a second. A writer, a singer is creating their own product. They create their own piece with their creativity. What the fuck does a video gamer create? Nothing. The developer made the game. Twitch made the platform. Essentially, you sit there and play what everyone else created and then have the gall to take money from people? Twitch streamers don't create shit. Bottom line, they don't create a damn thing, let alone do anything that someone else can't do. Twitchers are no different than a cam whore, with the exception that they have their fucking clothes on. At least with Patreon, people are creating content that would otherwise be smothered by Google or YouTube. And that's something I don't actually see anything wrong with. To make an equivalence of video games to, say, music or art, that would mean the comparison of Twitch to a music channel would be someone sitting there listening to a music station, listening to a music song, and then asking people for donations because they're listening to money. That's essentially what video gamers do on Twitch. There is no fucking difference in that. They play something, someone else's creation, someone else's product, sit there and then say, give me money, because I'm playing something that I didn't actually create on my own. So in all fairness, I actually like this idea of Patreon. Now, for those who ask, and I'm sure someone would I actually go on and do this? Reality is, what do I create? No, really, look at this for a second. What do I create, aside from maybe, say, a funny video like Mission Impossible, which even so requires a video game for me to do such? I don't create anything. I don't make vlogging videos or some shit. I don't take people's money just for the sake of taking their money like a Twitch streamer. I don't do poetry. I don't sculpt. I damn sure can't paint. I can't even fucking draw stick figures. So at best, what original creation could I possibly put on Patreon that will be worth money? I mean, maybe videos of my dogs or some shit like that, but I mean, who the fuck wants to subscribe, see my videos of my dogs all the time? That won't fucking entertain anyone for a very long period of time. So I probably wouldn't do it. And it's not that because I'm against it, but because obviously I've proven that I do like the actual product, but it's because I really don't have anything to create that's worth charging people for. I can't see people saying, oh yeah, let me give you $2 a month just to see your fucking dogs. Who gives a shit? So as far as me being on Patreon, I probably wouldn't do it, not because I don't like it, but because I don't have something that would actually be worth charging money for. Next question. Fresh Till Death wants to know, what is your outlook on the future of American college education? With so many kids and assholes throwing riots and looking for safe spaces at these major state colleges, I have never been more glad to be enrolled in a sane community college. I look forward to your opinion. If you're in college right now, then chances are you're too young to actually realize that this has been going on for over 100 fucking years at colleges. And it's not just in the US, but it's around the entire world. Partly because with most college students, many of them, who think they know any better, don't feel like adults or older adults really give a fuck about them or their interests. You know, usually this has been associated with left-wing or liberal protests, but conservatives have had their fair share also. I mean, just look at some of the most famous ones. We've had the Vietnam protests, probably some of the most famous ones of all time, and probably the most famous one is probably the one with Kent State, where people were actually killed in that one. During the civil rights movements, one of the right-wing ones were where protests were from white segregationists who didn't want black people in their schools or their colleges. You know, they wanted to keep minorities and colored people out of higher education. That's not left-wing. That's clearly right-wing type protest. Vietnam War was certainly left-wing, but this comes from all different kinds of areas. You know, England went through campus protests back when David Cameron was prime minister. Do you guys remember Tiananmen Square, 1989 in China, when a student stood in front of a tank to protest communism, ended up turning into a massacre with hundreds of students being slaughtered? You know, most protests from colleges are to protest things they don't agree with when it comes to governments, in particular, decisions that appear as dictatorship decisions, and their protests should be listened to because they could vote and they want their opinions to be listened to. And since students usually don't have the financial means or the resources to actually impact politics, you know, like rich corporate greedy assholes. I mean, let's be honest for a second. Who the fuck do you think a politician is going to listen to more? A CEO who could donate $1 million a year, or a fucking college student who could barely scratch a D in fucking geometry? Give me a break, man. Of course, that's who politicians are going to listen to, but that doesn't make that voice any less important. So naturally, their way of making politicians listen to them is by protesting. They're not like these greedy assholes who can just buy off a politician. And as much as this may seem like it's only going on now, this has been going on for hundreds of years now, and not just in the United States. Last question from over at Prestige Gamers. Abitesizetaco wants to know, if you could pick up a new language to learn, what language would it be? You know, I could probably fuck with you and say I want to learn Canadian. Hey, what's that all about? Or I could be a real asshole and be like, I want to learn redneck. Nah, man, but if I had to like pick a language, I'd probably go with Latin, mainly because almost all the languages that we have nowadays, with the exception of maybe a couple of ones that are also ancient languages, Latin is really the start of almost all the languages that we have: Spanish, Italian, French, English. So when you learn Latin, you could actually pick up all the other ones in return. Next question for the Magician Ecaw. I want to ask a political question. I live in Denmark, where we have social democracy as our main political ideology. In USA, of course, you are more right-oriented than us communists in Scandinavia. I have thought about this for a long time, and I want to ask you, if you could choose what ideology you want to implement in the country and why. Well, I'll tell you right now, no matter what you pick, there's bound to be flaws. That's without question, because it really depends on the type of country that you actually live in. See, in Scandinavian countries, where socialism dominates economic systems, indexes have shown how successful countries have been, such as Sweden, Denmark, Finland. For that region, socialism works. But if you try that in a country the size of, say, the US, Russia, or China, you start to see how it does. You know, China and Russia go to the extremes of socialism with communist regimes, where money is divided according to the leaders of the country with too much power. The United States would never be able to adopt a socialist economy because the wealth gap is far too wide for something like that to work right now. We have far too many rich people and way too many poor people. Capitalism allows the rich to get richer. And instead of a few key people in positions of power like you would have in Russia, you have multiple people that have the ability to just make themselves richer. But with capitalism, someone like a Mark Zuckerberg or Larry Page and Sergey Brin, they have the ability to create something and turn themselves into billionaires. While those who don't know how to create something, don't have the ability to create something, or the resources, will forever be at the mercy of those who can actually create. Capitalism works great for those who have the ability, those who have the resources to improve themselves. But the overwhelming majority of people are basically just trying to get by in life. And I know most people would say, hey, how about you combine the two ideas and you only take the best ones of each system? You know, that sounds like the best plan, of course, until you get into the details of what to implement. Are schools going to be private or controlled by the government? How will infrastructure be funded? Is it going to be private? Is it going to be by the government? What about taxes and earnings, healthcare? See, there's no ideal way of dividing things and doing things, because some things could be private, some things could be controlled. The only way a country's economic system is going to work is you need to determine ahead of time what resources will you need in order to make your plan work. You know, a smaller country would benefit from capitalism as long as they're self-resourced, where they can function without heavily reliance on outside trade. All countries need outside trade. It's just a matter of how much you actually require. If they don't have the resources, then a socialist method would probably be more viable, which is why Scandinavian countries fare so well. The larger a population grows, the more resources you need, and the more diverse resources you need to run a country. Capitalism with abundant resources means what happens in the US. Capitalism with minimal resources, where the wealth gap won't be a large fucking canyon of rich versus poor, that is more ideal. Now, socialism on a large scale with few resources to sustain your population is not a good idea, such as China, where they have far too many people that need to absorb the resources. So it's sort of a pick your poison in each one of your area. Each country has different needs. So when the US started out, think of this all these years ago, back when the country was first formed, it started with the original colonies forming into states. Capitalism, in the face of colonization, worked because the country was still small. But once we grew as a nation, it expanded out of control. Although government promotes freedom, it didn't promote equality, evidenced by our years of slavery. That in turn led immediately to the wealth gap, which leads to the problems that we have now, all these 200 fucking years later. So in theory, the only way to choose your economic system or your ideology is to determine exactly what you have ahead of time, how big of a nation you plan on becoming, how much importing you need to survive, and what can you export in order to balance that to make your system work. When you determine those four factors, that should determine your ideology, not the other way around. What ends up happening is if people determine their ideology before determining these factors, you end up with fucked up places like the US, Russia, or China. Next question from Wolf12King. So Jay, the other day during class, a girl had her Victoria's Secret thong riding high for every guy to see. Only thing is, I'm the only guy who see it, and it looks like to me, at least she paid for the name only, but that's beside the point. So Jay, this is what I'm asking you. If you have any stories about women being sluts or just oblivious to the fact that they're showing off, especially stories in high school. I mean, without even saying you're in class, I can tell you're young. And this question just makes me want to reach through the internet and beat some sense into you. Look, I get it. You're young and you don't know a damn thing about women. Shit, most men don't know a damn thing about women no matter how fucking old they get. But motherfucker, you're gonna have to learn quickly, man. Now, as I've said this in time before, question and answer videos, I will say it again. Women have it much tougher in life than men. And this question is a great example. Why? Now, I get it. You're not bashing women. You're not being an asshole towards this woman, and I get that. Believe me, I understand that. I get that you're trying to point out that she is exhibiting behavior that doesn't seem normal. Part of that is hormones at kids in Asian school and shit like that. But the other part is social pressures. It is much harder being a woman because everywhere you look, there is some influence as to how you're supposed to dress, act, look, how much you have to weigh. What does your hair need to look like? How sexually active do you need to be or not be? How much do you need to know about sex? How do you need to deal with boys and men? And the worst part is having to be judged by other girls or women or your peers just because they want to belittle someone else to make themselves feel better. You know, look, girls watch TV shows, movies, they see magazine covers of singers, models, all this shit all over social media over how they're supposed to act. They feel pressured into looking a certain way, being this pretty, that skinny, having an hourglass figure, having a wardrobe that matches their body, yet their ambitions and drive in life to succeed or form a career are an afterthought. What you're likely seeing isn't a girl being slutty. It's a girl feeling like the social pressures to look or act a certain way are finally coming out of her. She feels the need to show her thong, which, by the way, I still can't believe that's a fucking thing. Because I thought that shit died out like 3 or 4 years after the thong song came out. You know what I'm talking about, man? I mean, what the fuck? That was like 15 fucking years ago. But anyway, for whatever reason, whatever social issue she has, she's choosing to believe dressing a certain way is how she's supposed to act for her age. It's how she's supposed to look because maybe guys will look at her better. Maybe girls will look at her differently. Maybe she wants somebody to be jealous. Maybe she wants people to like her. And again, you won't understand this shit for another couple of fucking years, but the reality is women, especially at that age, have no idea how they're supposed to behave, how they're supposed to act, because they see so many conflicting things of what a woman is supposed to grow up and be. Is she supposed to be a sex symbol? Is she supposed to have a career? Is she supposed to be a nerd? Is she supposed to be sexually active? They don't fucking know these things. And then to have a guy who knows even less about a woman point these things out probably makes them even more confused than they were before they started wearing shit like that. You know, and as for shit for I saw, of course I saw my crazy fair shit. But again, part of that is what I just mentioned. young girls being pressured into acting a certain way because they thought that's how people wanted them to act. Can I go back and think of all the examples? I'm sure I can. But the reality is, now that I'm older, I have an understanding of what I was actually seeing. Not so much the behavior, but what was leading to that behavior. Alright, so we're going to stop it right here, right around the 20-minute mark. If you guys haven't seen your questions yet, obviously there's going to be a couple more videos that'll be coming this week. Tomorrow, pending everything goes correctly, I'm going to be streaming Mass Effect Live. And of course, you guys know I don't charge shit. I don't ask for donations on my Twitch channel. I don't give a shit about that crap. So if you guys want to see what Mass Effect Andromeda looks like, I'll be live right around 12 Eastern Standard Time or so. But again, I'll post a video on my channel once I am going live. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video to answer some more of your questions.